I'm State Representative David Millard of the 109th Legislative District. Welcome to Legislative Report. I'm reporting live to you from the Pennsylvania Farm Show for 2015. And what we're going to do is highlight some local residents who are exhibitors and or involved in some fashion or another here at the Pennsylvania Farm Show. And we hope that you'll enjoy the program. With me today at the Pennsylvania Farm Show is Mike McKay, who lives just outside of Bloomsburg. And Mike is very skilled at woodworking and doing all kinds of things with various types of wood. And Mike, welcome to our program, Legislative Report today. And we want to get your perspective, since you're working with wood. What are the best Pennsylvania woods to work with, and exactly what can you make out of them?
For our craft, which is making kitchenware, it's called treenware, wooden ware made from a tree. We prefer certain woods, particularly they have to have a closed grain. They need to not bleed off a flavor or a sap or anything. So most Pennsylvania hardwoods work very well. Particularly we use Pennsylvania wild cherry. You'll see some right here. Another one that we use a lot of is maple. We can use some of the softer maples, but we also tend to prefer sugar maple because it's very hard. Those are our two favorites. We also do some work in black walnut, and despite what some people think, it's actually a pretty good kitchen wood. It's not poisonous as some people think it is. We can use most woods. One of my favorites also is hickory. We have an abundance of it, and it is a really dense and pretty wood also.
Well, when I'm looking at the products that you make out of it, I'm also noticing that I don't see any power tools here.
Okay, well, we're doing a historic craft, and even though we have power tools at home, there's a lot of times that we do the finish work with hand tools because, first off, for what we do, in many cases, it's easier. It does a nicer finish, and we actually enjoy it more. It's very relaxing. I can sit in the basement and carve and turn out product pretty quickly, and I don't have to go to the shop, make a lot of dust and a lot of noise. It's a lot more soothing.
And when you're crafting something out of wood, for example, the kitchen utensil that we're going to show that you were working on, from start to finish, how long does that take you?
This piece, start to finish, I probably will have about a half an hour in it.
Wow.
So.
And is there a finish that's put on it then, or is it just natural?
The finish we use is mineral oil. Mineral oil, it never goes rancid, and one of the best things about it is it seals it and brings out the beauty of the wood. It can be renewed whenever it looks a little dry. You renew it with a fresh coat of mineral oil.
And when you're working with wood, are you working with the grain?
You always work with the grain.
Always work with the grain.
Because the tree, you can't fight the grain. You have to work with it. And if you work with it, even when you see things that you might consider an imperfection, they become a unique part of the product. We actually have, do we still have that one, the walnut one? We have a walnut spoon, the other one. This walnut spoon, for example, it had a spot right in here and it had to be worked with, but it made for a very pretty spoon. Some exceedingly dark grain along here, all right? We had another piece, it's already gone unfortunately. There were several ripples because of the grain, because we split with the grain and then we shave it down. But the ripples become part of the character of the piece. So.
And all Pennsylvania wood?
All Pennsylvania wood, made by Pennsylvanians.
Very good. Well, that's exactly what we tried to highlight today. All of the good things in the Commonwealth of PA, of which hardwood and softwood is certainly a part of that. I want to thank you for explaining what you do for us today, and certainly look forward to seeing a lot of finished products.
Appreciate that.
With me today is Bev Gruber, who is very much involved in agriculture in Pennsylvania. And Bev, thank you so much for being a part of the program today. And certainly our friendship goes back many, many years with involvement. Agriculture being the #1 industry in Pennsylvania. In Columbia County, we have a number of orchards. A lot of apple orchards are very prevalent. As a matter of fact, I look across the field from where I live, and I'm surrounded by apple orchards. So our apple production in Pennsylvania certainly contributes greatly to the economy in Pennsylvania, and your thoughts on apple growing in the Commonwealth.
There's lots of orchards and lots of farm markets. They sort of tie right together and have been very, very prominent lately. They do a beautiful job of the display here, which is put together by the Horticulture Association and the apple growers, and they all come in and work, and it's just been a great experience.
And I know that several years ago when the colony collapse disorder with the honeybees took place, almost every crop in Pennsylvania had some ripple sensation to that. And the variety of apples, now that that issue has been taken care of or corrected, the variety of apples grown in Pennsylvania, I mean, we're known for more than just one variety of apple.
Oh yes, I think we have something like, what I'd hate to guess, I think it's between 18 and 20 different varieties that we have here that people can enter in and win. So.
Well, and we've also seen, with regard to agriculture, a lot of spin-off industries in Pennsylvania. We certainly have a big presence of dairy cattle here in Pennsylvania and dairy farms, and part of the spin-off product of that is the milk. Obviously, the milk that's turned into yogurt, and of course the one of the items, ice cream, everybody's favorite, and
right.
Certainly one of the items that you're holding here in your hand today.
Right, and that's cheese, and we added cheese this year for the first time. We got blocks as big as 50 pounds, wow. Clear down to, even smaller than this. But we had 27 different dairies that are making cheese in Pennsylvania enter this year, and we're really, really pleased with that for the first time.
And my understanding, too, is that a lot of these are still family, mom and pop or family run businesses,
right.
Cottage industry businesses, if you will, that are trying to get a foothold in
right.
with an agricultural product right here in the Commonwealth.
Right, and many of them are sold right on the farm or in their farm market or out of their dairy, so to speak. They aren't all bottlers by any means, but they just take some of the milk and turn it into cheese and sell it. So, and the variety is unbelievable. And
I read not too long ago in a national publication that when it comes to farm markets and the variety of things that are offered in Pennsylvania, that really we don't have any rivals. There might be other states that are right up there with us, but we're unmatched as far as the variety of products and the number of farms.
Yes, I think that's true. I mean, we have honey all over the state. We have maple all over the state, mainly in the northern tier with the maple. But, and the mushrooms, of course, they're in the southern tier, and these are all farm products, and they're all exhibited here at farm shows. So.
Well, and you've been involved in another industry in Pennsylvania, aside
right.
from the farm show, that I've had involvement in for over 2 decades as well, and that's the Pennsylvania fairs. And I always like to think that the fairs are a showcase for the agricultural industry and the products here in the Commonwealth.
That's right. They just like the farm show. I mean, this really is our state fair since we don't have a state fair. They show and they have all these same kinds of exhibits that we have here.
And of course, I handle arts and crafts, and you are a jury judge when it comes to a lot of the exhibits in Pennsylvania. And I think that we both share the same sentiment that it highlights the skill of our Pennsylvania residents.
Right, and photography, talking about skill, we have so many photographs, they hardly had room for them this year. They may have to limit the number of entries that people can make.
Well, and we like to provide continuity with our agriculture here in Pennsylvania, and one way that we do that is through the over 100 fairs that are in the Commonwealth, and the youth involvement in that. And here at the Farm Show, a stepping stone to really getting to the Farm Show for a lot of our youth is the 4-H and the FFA involvement.
Right. A lot of people think they can't enter here unless they win at a county level. That's only true in 4 categories. The rest of the categories of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds that we have, you can just, if you want to enter, you just show up and enter your item.
And I understand that the Department of Ag website is a good starting point to see what the categories are.
That's right. The whole book is online, and you can do it all online. So.
Well, we certainly want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule here at the Farm Show. I'm sure that the days are long and the nights are short.
Right.
But we certainly count on individuals like yourself to keep that heritage going here in Pennsylvania.
All right. It's nice speaking with you.
Here we are at the 2015 Pennsylvania Farm Show. Part of the culture and the heritage of Pennsylvania has been the standing timber. When William Penn first set foot in what would become the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, a lot of hardwood trees, a lot of industry came about, the lumbering industry, the lumbering boom in the Commonwealth. And today I have two guests with us who are going to explain to us the absence of hardwood in Pennsylvania, and specifically the chestnut tree. We've got Larry from the Pocono region, and we've got Lake from Columbia County, one of my constituents. And Larry, we spoke earlier about the chestnut tree, and you told me quite a story about what happened, bringing about the demise of it and the efforts that are currently taking place to do restoration of it. Would you please detail that for our listeners as well?
In the early 1900s, the American chestnut was affected by a blight from the Chinese chestnut. And during the early 1900s, it killed off a large section of the American chestnut throughout the East Coast. So the American Chestnut Foundation is trying to backcross the blight resistance that the Chinese chestnut has with the good characteristics that the American chestnut has. So we're in our 6th generation of backcrossing right now, and once we get a blight resistant American chestnut, we will eventually hope to reintroduce that to the forests of not just Pennsylvania, but the entire East Coast.
Very good. And Lake, you just heard what Larry told us about it. Have the efforts so far been successful?
They've been successful in the fact that we've seen progress towards a resistant and more American tree. Efforts are still underway as to figure out whether or not we're ready to say that, yes, we've accomplished our goal in restoring a truly American chestnut tree with a full ability to grow like an American chestnut tree could grow, and that is to be one of the main trees of the forest in Pennsylvania, because we cross it with the Chinese chestnut. So that tree grows shorter, and we're trying to bring it back to the American. We're still on our way right now. Like he said, we're in the 6th generation. It'll take a few more years of testing to find out if this tree is the tree. If it's not, of course, we're still here, and we're still going to be working in our mission to keep trying with that program. There's also another program that's going on in New York to bring the chestnut tree back, and that works with genetic splicing. It's a different technique, whereas our technique here that we're working on in Pennsylvania is more of a selective breeding program.
And the fact that you're from Berwick, you're still working in the woods of greater Northeast PA.
Yes, sir. I'm actually, I'm not representing that right now, but I do work over in Carbon County at Hickory Run State Park. But right now, this is my personal interest is in the American chestnut, and just bringing back the species so that we can have a lot more biodiversity in the area. And it'd be great for foresters. It'd be a great lumber product for them, and it'd be great just to save this tree and to bring it back so that for the future generations they'll be able to enjoy it.
And Larry, although we're here at the Pennsylvania Farm Show talking about a Pennsylvania issue, it goes well beyond the borders of Pennsylvania. Am I correct in that?
Absolutely. It was the entire East Coast. It was affected by the blight. Yeah.
And where are we as far as growth of trees that we're trying to do in a replenishment program?
Well, there's been mixed success. Now, what you have to understand is the blight, the way it kills the tree is it goes and enters the bark, and it slowly kills the bark around the tree. That can take anywhere from 1 to 2 to 20 years to kill the tree, a pure American. So, and one of the ways that people can help out, and one of the things that I'm interested in, is finding pure Americans in the mountains. Like if you're from Columbia County, Catawissa Mountain is a possible area, Knob Mountain. Go up in those areas, hike around, see if you can find any pure American chestnuts. And if they're producing nuts in a significant size, you can report them to our lab in Penn State, and we'll have them checked to see if they are really American chestnuts. So the growth is slowed down by the blight and eventually kills the American chestnuts. With our resistant varieties, we've seen increased resistance over with the back cross with the Chinese chestnut, which is completely resistant. The hybrids, only a small percentage of all the hybrids that are produced are resistant from their initial back cross and then crossing them with the American chestnut. So we select only the most resistant trees, the trees for the resistance and for the American traits. So as far as our effectiveness with the resistance, we've certainly developed resistant trees. The question is, are they really American chestnut trees? And that's what we're working on, trying to keep that resistance and keep back crossing them with the Americans. As far as the growth rates, we've seen now the breeding program began in Pennsylvania in 1994. That's not really that long for a tree to grow to its full height. And a lot of those initial trees were cut down because they were selected against, because we only kept the best trees. Now, as far as the trees are doing now, I think we're seeing a lot of progress with that. The canker growth has slowed down, but it's going to be a few more years before we know.
Well, that's wonderful. And I think that our conversation today highlighted the fact that ag research in Pennsylvania, whether it's crops or hardwood trees or orchard trees, whatever the crop is, agriculture being the number one industry in Pennsylvania, that what a good investment it is for research to keep out any infestation that devastates our crops here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, when the American chestnut started dying off, it affected people across Pennsylvania because a lot of people made their living off of it. They would gather the nuts in the fall and sell them to the cities. So that whole economic benefit would be returned if it was reintroduced.
Well, very good, and I want to thank each of you for, enlightening us as to the plight of the American chestnut tree, and certainly hope that those efforts will continue, that someday we can stand here very proudly and say that it's been restored to levels that are acceptable both in the industry and to the public at large. Thank you. We're with Charlie from the Pennsylvania Beekeepers Association, and Charlie, we know that agriculture being the number one industry in Pennsylvania, all of the crops are really dependent on honeybees, on bees.
Right, yeah. The majority of our fruits and vegetables rely on honeybee pollination. For instance, apples, we have a lot of fruit in Adams County, apples and peaches and whatnot. They require about a 90% insect pollination. Without that, we would get very few apples and disformed fruits. I come from Crawford County, Pennsylvania, it's almost up the Erie area, and I pollinate up along the lakes up there myself. I take bees into orchards, and we do blueberries, strawberries, pumpkins, even wildflowers. With the Ernst Conservation up there, we do wildflowers. But yeah, they're very important to all aspects of agriculture because, yeah, literally without them, it wouldn't happen.
Now, how many beekeepers are there in the Commonwealth?
Right now, we're looking at somewhere around 3,500 beekeepers. The interesting thing is that 94% of them have less than 25 hives. So the majority of our beekeepers, even at 10, if you cut that statistic at 10, I think it's still 86, 90% have 10 hives or fewer. But that's where the industry is actually growing. Our commercial beekeepers are not growing, they're sustaining themselves, and we went through the colony collapse, and we haven't really ever figured out exactly what the cause of that was. There's a lot of different areas of concern with nutrition and genetics and disease and pesticides. All those things play a piece of the puzzle. We haven't, but the independent beekeepers are really the ones that they're kind of like the workhorses in this at this point in time. And as the Beekeeper Association goes, we're trying to aid that with bee-friendly zonings and stuff, because some of these people are in urban and suburban areas, and that's just as important as the rest. A lot of our commercial beekeepers actually don't spend a lot of time in the state because they're migratory, going state to state. So it's
following the crop harvest.
Yeah, right. That's where it's economics drives everything. But the independent beekeeper's putting all his own money and resources into it and making it happen.
Now we talked. You mentioned the colony collapse. What's the state of affairs as far as bees since that collapse?
Well, we haven't actually seen, the researchers are telling us, we haven't actually seen that scenario of collapse in probably 4 years. Now, we still lose bees. So the question now, and we are looking at this in different aspects, but why are we losing our bees? One of the things that the State Beekeeping Association is doing is we have started a queen improvement program where we're looking at northern genetics and hardy stocks. We've partnered with 5 other northern states, and we're selecting for genetic bees that are Varroa mite resistant and survive the winter, and we're going to requeen to those. And we feel this is so important that we're giving away queens to everybody. As part of the program is we're going to be giving bees away.
Now, when we talk beekeeping, is it one species of bee, or are there several?
Well, bees they're native to Europe. So we have bees they're the same species, but they come from different regions, and each region has its own climate and geographic, distinguishing things. But in the United States, we move bees around so much that we don't establish something that's real distinguishing. But there's different species that there's they're called Russians and Italians and Carniolans and Caucasians.
But they can thrive no matter where in contiguous U.S.
Right, except that we're concerned that some of the bees that are used to warmer climates are not going to survive in our northern Pennsylvania.
And are there any specific species, again, that help one crop better as opposed to another?
No. As far as working a crop, they're all equally capable. When you put it, doesn't matter, side by side. If you got a good crop, they're all productive.
Now, warm climate bees don't do good in cooler climate. What about colder climate bees?
Well, the colder climate bees, they can pretty much adapt to the warmer, year round. We have some Pennsylvania beekeepers that winter in Florida, and they're pretty aware of their genetic pool. They really want to be able to bring bees back because those are the workhorses that we depend on to resupply. If we lose 40 or 50% of our bees, we go to those. We try to work with our Pennsylvania or northern producers that are down south and bring those bees back here.
And what's a typical population of a colony?
Well, the typical population through the winter months, you'd be a few thousand bees. They continue to cluster and stay alive. But in the summer months, to produce honey, you need to have a hive that's at least 40 to 50,000 or more bees. If you're less than that, you won't produce honey. So in health of the hive is key.
Well, and you mentioned honey. We know that what the bee does as far as a service is to help with all other kinds of crops in the Commonwealth. But the honey is the product of the bee. And can you share with us a variety? What are some of the products that come from honey or from bees?
Well, yep, the honeys are actually a high demand item. Pennsylvania local markets, people like to know where their food comes from, especially. There's doubt on some of the box stores of where it's coming from, but in Pennsylvania we'll start out in the summer with locust and basswood and spring blossoms and fruit blossoms, and then we can go into some of the more targeted crops like clovers and buckwheat. And I know I had an opportunity to do canola for a few years. They were working with research. We were talking about research a little bit, and the Ernst Farm up in Meadville, they were working with different varieties of canola to see how well they could work with that. So I had bees into that, and later in the fall we get into wildflowers, and some of the invasive species actually produce honey well. So it's a two-edged sword, and it's an invasive species, but it sustains bees through the summer. So,
And we know that there are other products, spin-off products from it as well. Beeswax.
yeah, sure. Beeswax. For every 100, when we harvest honey, we take that cappings off the top of the frame. For every 100 pounds of honey you produce, you get about 1 pound of wax. But again, it's a local product, and people like it. We also produce, from those waxes, you can make hand creams and lip balms and salves. We also collect pollen from the hive, where the bees bring the pollen in, and that's a high nutrition, high protein food health supplement, actually.
Well, it's certainly in my house, it's not uncommon to have a good cup of tea in the evening with a little bit of honey in it.
Oh yeah, and that's where a lot of people use it. But you can use it everywhere. You can put it on your cereal, put it on the salad. You can put it on ice cream. We have ice cream at the honey booth, here at the farm show, and there's all kinds of places to use it.
And certainly, with regard to bees and honey, it's a product and an industry that goes back decades and centuries.
Right. Yeah. In fact, the Pennsylvania State Beekeepers, we're celebrating our 110th anniversary this year. We've been around a little while. I understand the Lancaster Beekeeping Association is actually older than the State Association, but it does go back as an organization.
And part of our conversation today also was the future of it, and certainly the importance of ag research here in the Commonwealth. That so many products, the number one industry being agriculture, so many products are dependent on one another, and the research is just right step with it to ensure the future of all of our agriculture here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and actually that's one of the things. We work with Penn State pretty closely, in Penn State and the Department of Agriculture. And one of the things that with all the new growth in independent beekeepers in our Queen Improvement Program, and it's probably the hardest thing to do is record keeping, but we're trying to employ like a citizen scientist, where if you have a hive and you have one or two hives, if you could do some record keeping, because the data is so important and it's hard to gather that data. And if we could get from more different more sources, then we have a better pool to draw from and understand what's going on.
Well, and the fact that there's a comeback as far as beekeeping in Pennsylvania certainly shows us that the future looks very bright for beekeeping.
Well, we talked to a lot of people so far this week, and a lot of people are interested in starting beekeeping. But again, we need the cooperation with some of the local governments as well. And we have guidelines. We have some good guidelines of establishing bees in safe ways that work. The city of Philadelphia has a lot of rooftop beekeepers and vacant lots, and they have no regulations. And it works hand in hand. The beekeepers are very responsible in what they do. And we'd like to see that kind of a model go across the state.
Very good. Well, Charlie, you're a wealth of information, and we certainly want to thank you for sharing that information with us today. And, we certainly wish the industry the best in the future.
Well, I appreciate your interest, and I'm sure that we'll be in touch from time to time.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
This is Pennsylvania State Representative David Millard thanking you for watching this edition of Legislative Report.